What up boyos, it's Ben and welcome back finally to another video. Today I'm going to be ranking my worst to best games of 2023. Little disclaimer, this is not a list of every game that came out last year, only the ones I was interested in. So if a game is not on this list, that's because I had no interest in it. So without further ado, let's begin. Coming in dead last at number 45 is a game that I would comfortably say at this moment in time is the worst game I've ever played, and that is The Lord of the Rings Gollum. I refunded this game and I still felt scammed. The game crashes every 5 minutes. If it doesn't crash, it softlocks you after you die and forces you to restart anyway. How can Gollum in 2002 look like this? How can Gollum in 2014 look like this? And how can Gollum in 2023 look like this? Just take a look at the Steam reviews and see for yourself. Absolute travesty. At number 44, we have Redfall. The only reason why this game is better than Gollum is because of the devs. Arcane Studios have developed some gems over the years. They've developed, in my opinion, one of the best games ever made in Dishonored. The entire Dishonored franchise is solid, and Deathloop was fantastic. And even though Redfall is, well, I was going to say even though Redfall is a bump in the road, even though Redfall is a massive fucking crater in the middle of the street, there is a way back for them. They haven't abandoned the game, to be fair to them, and even though it's still dog shit, they have released patches and updates, and do have a very loyal core fan base. Whereas you look at Daedalic Entertainment, even though they have released several incredibly good indie games over the years, it will be very difficult for them to regain people's faith in future projects, especially ones they aim to have the same level of hype as Gollum. Number 43, Overwatch 2, came out on Steam this year and I just fancied sticking it at the ass end of this list because it is ass, complete franchise killer. Number 42, Forspoken, further proof that graphics isn't everything. It really pains me putting this game this low on the list, but at number 39 is Kerbal Space Program 2. The basic premise was KSP but better, and so far it barely has 50% of the features KSP does, and pretty much every system that exists in the game at the moment is broken. A roadmap was released at launch but with no dates attached at all. The visuals have been updated but only with highly increased system specs. I do have faith that this game will eventually get to the state we were promised, but until that time comes, this game is not worth half the cost of the $42.99 price tag attached to it. Number 40, Blood Bowl 3. I'm a huge fan of Blood Bowl 2 and was really looking forward to this, but in typical fashion the launch was gash and everything in this game feels expanded on but progressed at the same time. There is a season pass which just feels cheap as it is offering content that should have been there in the first place. The game is buggy as fuck and overall underwhelming. Number 39, Payday 3. An online service model, gash launch, game breaking bugs, crashes, shite UI. There were and still are a lot of problems with this game, however I could have looked past it if the devs were on time with their updates and kept to their promises, but they didn't. They delayed and delayed until all my interest fizzled out. If you want to play Payday, just play Payday 2. Number 38, Octopath Traveler 2. Honestly, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about this game. The art style is great, the soundtrack is gorgeous, and the combat is fantastic. However, it just isn't for me. When I play a game like this first time around, I want to be enthralled by the characters and the story, and the negatives I have for this game are the same reasons why I didn't like the first one. The characters have entirely separate stories. There's barely any overarching story that involves any crossover between them. They join your party purely because you just happen to be walking past at the time. The stories for each character also feels quite poorly written, and due to that the game lacks so much substance for me. With no solid story and no enriching characters for me to grit my teeth into whilst enjoying the gameplay, it just falls well short. Coming in at number 37 is again a game that I'm sad to see this low, and that is Darkest Dungeon 2. The game looks and sounds incredible, and I often say that when a developer has a vision, then the consumers should nurture that vision and not scream and shout about the devs ruining a game. It's one of the reasons why I love The Last of Us 2 so much. The devs had a vision and stuck to it. However, and there's always a however, when you have a concept and formula that works so well and you vastly change it, you can't expect people to be anything less than disappointed at a minimum. I don't get why they kept some elements of the combat system from the first game but then changed some pretty cool mechanics. All this was to try and reduce RNG and make the combat easy to follow, but the RNG added to the experience of the first game. The tension and desperations and eventual euphoria. Most of the time things that happen inside the combat feels as though they came out of nowhere, whereas in the first game you were able to see exactly what was going against you. The token system that exists in the game I'm sure exists just to fuck with you. It makes the experience miserable if you don't try and work with it. Each combat encounter feels the same and the game just fails at what it was trying to achieve in my eyes. At number 36, Atomic Heart. I'll be honest, I completely forgot about this game up until about a week before it came out, and honestly I wish I'd just forgotten about it full stop. To be fair, it wasn't terrible but was a lot worse than what I first thought it would be. Dialogue felt pretty poorly written, the combat felt very bland and there was only a couple of weapons worth using. The story again felt very bland, there was a lot of go there and do this. The main character was a big no-no for me as well, very dull and uninspiring. The game looks good, the game is quite beautiful, mixed with the dystopian set piece, the environments feel engaging at times. However, for the staggering $54.99 price tag that the game boasts, a nice looking world is not enough. Number 35, Sons of the Forest, another game for me which I was really looking forward to, but it just didn't hit the mark. I don't have a lot of bad things to say about the gameplay. It expands very well on the foundations the first game set, more intuitive crafting and a greater crafting range in terms of what you can actually build. The game looks great and the sound design is excellent. However, the atmosphere is just miles below par of the first one. The first game kept you on the edge of your seat. You didn't quite know what the island had in store, what was beneath the surface, what monstrosities, if any, would come lurking forth from the depths. Each encounter with the natives of the island was surreal, and the eventual reveal of the secret labs and experiments was great. And for me, just none of that was there in the second game, and that was the part for which I was most excited. Now, number 32 and number 31, even though they're at different positions, I'm pretty much ranking them as equals, and that's Street Fighter 6 and Mortal Kombat 1. Street Fighter 6 seems to have actually improved from the mixed feedback of Street Fighter 5 and turned itself into a solid and versatile fighting game, equipped with new mechanics and a respectable single-player experience. And Mortal Kombat 1 is obviously a new take on the iconic series, with a new and interesting combat system and improved single-player mode. The games both look really good and also run smoothly. I know they were pretty basic overviews of both of them, but I don't really play these sort of games anymore. I didn't sink much time into them and I only ever really played them with my cousin, but I did enjoy the time I spent on them. And number 32 is Dead Island 2. I fully adore Dead Island. The first game is one of my favourite games of all time and I've played it from start to finish an ungodly number of times. And even though Dead Island 2 was I still enjoyed it to a degree. The gameplay is pretty much the same as Dead Island and Riptide. Find weapons, upgrade them, modify them, kill zombies, complete quests and progress the story. And for some people that can be quite dull, but I think it works pretty well. I think the combat is good. It's nothing special, don't get me wrong, but it is good. It's meaty and fluid. The graphics as well are very good and the gore is especially good. When you're beating a zombie to a bloody pulp, different pieces of it will just fly off all over the gaff. The intestines will just like dribble out. And I know I sound like a psycho, but it's impressive. However, I do not have a pair of rose tinted glasses on, and there is a reason why Dead Island 2 is number 30 on this list. The writing is pretty fucking awful. Like, the writing in Dead Island 1 wasn't amazing, but it was bearable and at times decent. The characters had personality and a bit of substance to them, and weren't blurting out cringy one-liners every 5 fucking minutes. The story is pretty dogshit and ends in such a poorly constructed, blindly elusive ending. It's pretty shocking. Like, it's not even ambiguous, it just ends. And like I've said previously, shoddy writing, uninspiring characters and a dull story switches me off pretty much every time. Number 31, we have Somerville, a game that surprised me to say the least. Not all good, but still. It's a game that you can tell took every inspiration from the likes of Inside and Little Nightmares. The game nails the atmosphere for me, and the world is intriguing. I'd love to see it expanded on in the future. The sound design is phenomenal as well, like truly phenomenal. Some of the most creative sound design in years. But the game is just pretty boring. Very few puzzles, chase sequences that have absolutely zero suspense, a fairly lackluster story. There are times as well where dying is the only way of learning what to do, which obliterates what very little suspense the game had built up. I would recommend this game on sale though, purely for you to experience the sounds of the game. Number 30 is Diablo 4, and I struggled to figure out whether I enjoyed this game, and I think the answer is I do, but there are many things that annoy me, to put it politely. Online service model yet again, which as always is just gash. The game loves a cheeky disconnect, soulless cash grabs and the forced cosmetic downloads. The game is 60 quid and expects you to pay for more stuff that is just pointless. The game seems to have regressed from Diablo 3 in terms of class balancing. Mages can only use wands and staffs, whereas necromancers can use two-handed swords, one-handed swords, shields, two-handed sickles. The story is quite boring, not much character development, but to be fair, I'm not really playing Diablo for those elements. On the flip side, there are a few things that make me enjoy the game. The graphics are great, very dark and dismal, which works well with the setting and atmosphere. There are detailed backgrounds, blood and gore. The gameplay is fun, even solo. It can be quite mindless at times, but I think that works pretty well. And sometimes you'll find yourself in a tricky spot and need to concentrate. The game feels more open world with the field bosses and events you can do, and there is a lot of potential for fun, wacky builds. Is it worth 60 quid? What AAA title is these days? Number 29, we have Amnesia the Bunker, a game that I have pretty mixed feelings about. Overall, I enjoyed the game, kinda. To start off with, it's very strong out the gate, strong premise, the game is pretty creepy, the atmosphere is very good, sound design is also very good, and the struggle for resources keeps you enthralled in the gameplay. However, the game isn't very long and feels quite small by the time you've seen what it has to offer, and that is not necessarily a bad thing in itself, but after 5 hours I was glad I was at the end. A typical trope with horror games is once you've seen the thing stalking you, it loses a lot of scare factor, and with the pretty basic AI for the monster, it just stops being creepy very quickly. Number 28 is City Skylines 2. I have a lot of respect for Paradox as a publisher, so much so that I believe this will be an incredible game in a year or two when they deliver patch after patch, update after update, and a plethora of DLC. But I'm giving my views on it now, and at the moment it's decent, but that's it. Big improvement in graphics, which is always nice, and you don't need a NASA PC to run it. However, it feels far emptier than the first game. No Steam Workshop on launch, which I felt was a bit odd. A series of bugs, which unfortunately is expected these days, but still inherently infuriating. And on top of everything, the game just doesn't feel as in-depth as the first. Certain systems don't seem to work properly, and the micromanagement aspect of the game feels pretty stripped back. Like I said, I have faith this will be a great game in the future, but at the minute, definitely not worth $41.99. Number 27 is Remnant 2. As a huge fan of From Software and Souls-likes in general, I was fairly critical of this game. It was okay, but that's about it. Positives is the game looks good. I really like the art style of the first game, and this one was much prettier. The enemy design is also very good, but when you're making a Souls-like, good enemy design is pretty much a mandatory feature. On the flip side, the game crashed a lot, a few bugs which were annoying, and the game feels very poorly balanced. It bored me long before I could finish it. And the first one had a survival/roguelike mode, which I really liked, but had been removed from this one. Overall, I think it was worse than the first game, but still, like I said, it was okay. Again, I think I'm being overly critical because of how much I like the genre, but I would recommend the game as it is at least unique, just probably not worth $41.99, so wait for a sale. So at this point it became exceedingly more difficult to rank each game, and a lot came down to personal preferences. There are some games now that are only marginally better than the one prior, and the gulf in quality kept getting smaller and smaller. Up until this point, I found it quite easy to rank each game, not only because of my own preferences, but because of the general number of flaws in each one. It was rather easy to determine where they sat. But yeah, I just wanted to give you a little insight into my thought process, really. At number 26, we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered. Absolute nostalgia fest playing it, really good. It looks fantastic. It was developed by Vicarious Visions, who did the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy remaster. They did a fantastic job with that, and they've done a fantastic job with this. Also, Iron Galaxy Studios as well, who are very talented. They've done a few remasters. Runs like a dream and is still a pleasure to play. I think it was 50% off when I got it, and it's 40 quid on Steam now, but I think it's worth it. Number 25, Stronghold Definitive Edition. Another solid remaster, all the content of the first game plus more, improved graphics, workshop support, Steam achievements. Only downsides is no skirmish mode against AI, and the multiplayer could do with a bit of work. Also, game is 13 quid on Steam, so a big must buy for me. Number 24, Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. Isometric exploration Divinity-esque game. If that's your thing, you'll like it, even if you're not a massive Warhammer fan. Pretty solid story, but does start to slowly drop off after the third chapter. Combat is pretty fun and pretty well balanced, and the game does offer tons of lore if you're into your 40k stuff. The game does have a few bugs which can be pretty annoying, but for me I didn't encounter anything on the game breaking side, which is always a bonus. But it does need a bit of work from the devs to iron it out before I can say buy it for full price. But this game is definitely worth it, even at like 20-30% off. Number 23. Now, this one is kind of cheating a little bit, but I don't care. Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty DLC. CD Projekt Red fucking know how to make a DLC, and this is no exception. The DLC paired with a 2.0 update for the game just slaps, honestly. A great expansion which at times is pretty breathtaking. Great new story, characters, soundtrack, and a new Earth Night City. I know the game got a lot of stick at its launch, blah blah blah, but this is it in its peak form now, I'd say. Number 22, Shadows of Doubt. Extremely immersive, fully simulated, procedurally generated. This game ticks a lot of boxes for me. It's noir detective setting, working on murder cases, making money on the side whilst trying to catch a serial killer. Gorgeous art style, one of the best looking games of the year. This game is still in early access and there's still a lot more stuff to come. My only issues with the game is it's a little buggy, and like I said, it's in early access, but the devs need to iron that stuff out before adding more content, as there is a lot to work with at the minute, and the game is pretty poor at explaining the mechanics, but this is definitely worth your time and money, a great experience. Number 21, The Outlast Trials. I've been looking forward to this game for ages, and it is honestly pretty good. I played it with a friend and would definitely recommend it being played like this. Playing with randoms can definitely be a unique but rather tainted experience. A good atmosphere with generally creepy vibes at times. Mechanics are quite simple on the surface but do get more in depth with the different upgrades and gadgets. Game does get pretty repetitive though. Each trial follows the same sort of formula and the AI isn't the best, but playing it with friends it definitely becomes a fun and enjoyable experience. At number 20, FIFA. EA Sports FC 24. This is the first EA football game I've played in a few years, but I thought it was pretty good. I've played mainly Manager Mode and Ultimate Team so far, and I've enjoyed both. There's far more to the Manager Mode these days in terms of tactics and squad building and planning, which I enjoy. Ultimate Team is still filled with the same sweaty beanbags it's always been filled with, but it is funny. The game suffers from a bit of jank. Moving through the menus at times feels like you're trying to push a sedated gorilla through 4 foot of mud. I haven't encountered much in terms of bugs or crashes, to be fair, and overall I have enjoyed playing it, but the game does ask for a hefty sum, so I would say wait for a sale. At number 19 is a game that was my most anticipated game of 2023, and that is Lords of the Fallen. As a game that was presented as the new next-gen Souls-like, I was hooked from the beginning. And I know a lot of people had problems with the game, but I did enjoy it. I think the level design is the game's strongest aspect. The ability to switch between the living world and the Umbral Realm made the game unique and stand out from a lot of Souls-likes. Bosses weren't particularly challenging, but were fun, with the odd exception, and no two really felt the same. There is a lot in terms of build variety with different classes, spells and weapons. The story felt a little convoluted at times and felt like it was trying to achieve a few different things all at once. A big thing I like about From Software is how the story feels connected to the world. Even with multiple endings, each one feels natural, and I didn't really get that with this game. Sound design is very good, and overall I really enjoyed this game. Number 18, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Again, I know a lot of people had a few problems with this game, and I encountered a few of my own, but despite that, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. The launch was pretty gash, and there were problems people had with bugs and crashes, but I bought the game when it was on sale a little while after it came out, and didn't really experience much of that. The game crashed a couple of times, but I didn't encounter anything that ruined my experience. The game looks fantastic, the combat is more in depth, and the same with the exploration, and the story, just like the first, is very good. Everything from the first game has been expanded on, and that for me is everything a sequel should be. 60 quid, AAA title, it is what it is. If you can wait for a sale then do so, but the game is definitely worth your time and money. At number 17, we have Meet Your Maker, another creatively unique game with Super Mario Maker vibes. Impressive visuals and compelling gameplay really go a long way with this one. Create your own outpost, challenge yourself by taking on ones made by the community. A base building game with an actual major function to building bases, and one that the devs seem proud of and continue to support. This is a game though that you'll either love or hate, with no real in between. Can be easily frustrating with some of the mechanics limiting creativity, and also coming up against real stickler outposts people have created just to piss you off. Other than that though, I really enjoyed this concept and I think it's worth your time and money. At number 16 is The Last of Us Part 1, obviously PC release this year, but this is an absolute gem of a remaster, highlights and reinvigorates everything that made this game a masterpiece in the first place. Incredibly detailed and the game is stunning. Iron Galaxy Studios have again made this game come to life with the graphics, new animations and visuals do absolute wonders here. However, taking my rose tinted glasses off, it did have a pretty gash launch. I waited for about a month after it came out before playing it, and by that point all the game breaking shit had been patched, but it would have been unfair for me to not comment on it. The very minor issues I encountered, however, didn't taint my experience. Number 15, The Finals. Fast paced, destructible environments, solid gunplay. This is a great FPS. When I first played it, it reminded me of old school arena shooters because of how the movement felt, but the game looks and feels great, and there is so much potential in it. There's a fair amount of build / class variety, but it's something that the devs definitely need to put some thought into if they want the game to last and compete with other FPSs. At the moment, there's only 4 maps as well. There are a few variants and events that can occur which do keep the games fresh, but in the longer term, the game does need a few adjustments to balance in and more content. However, at the grand old price of 0 schmeckles, it's definitely worth your time. Number 14, Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin. I've really enjoyed the time I've spent on this game and will continue to sink more hours into it. A lot of the negative reviews I've seen are people think it was going to be more like Age of Empires, for example, and that's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. I don't think the devs can be completely blamed, maybe more of an issue with marketing and even people not properly researching before buying it. I think the game's a solid tactical RTS, however. If you like Dawn of War and Dawn of War 2, you will definitely like this. The campaign is pretty well done and well designed, the combat is quite engaging and you need to stay focused as units will get locked in melee combat. The AI is fairly lackluster and definitely needs some improvements, same with the UI, it's a bit janky, but I have complete faith that Frontier Developments will turn this game into a great game with a few updates and patches. Number 13, we have Risk of Rain Returns. Never played the original, but I'm a huge fan of Risk of Rain 2, and I gotta say, this is a joy to play. Music, amazing, Chris don't miss, if you know you know. Graphics are great, gameplay is just incredible, god level powers from item stacking. Animations are amazing, all for 13 quid, go and buy it. At number 12, we have Slay the Princess. Stanley Parable-esque vibes mixed in with a visual novel creates this absolute gem. I don't want to give too much away about this game because it will spoil it, but it is very well structured and planned, incredibly smart and achieves what it aims for with flying colours. Gorgeous art style, which is basically just still images but is still extremely captivating. The number of choices you can make and the different paths you can take is insane, honestly. My mate bought this for me in the Christmas sale, but if I could have paid the full 15 quid for it, I would have done, and I suggest you do too. At number 11, we have Dave the Diver. This game was way better than I expected, and for 17 quid it's an absolute fucking steal. This is the quality AAA title should aim for. The story is simplistic yet powerful and engrossing. The gameplay is fulfilling. It's relaxing but never feels slow or boring. It's incredibly well balanced in that aspect. The combat is satisfying, and learning about and collecting different fish never feels like a chore. All this equipped with a great sound design and a lovely art style makes it a must buy for me. Moving into the top 10 now, and at the number 10 spot we have Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. I absolutely cannot rate From Software highly enough. After dropping one of the best games of all time in 2022, they go and release a full-on passion project 18 months later. Honestly, never played any of the older games, but I was familiar with them. Extremely dynamic and unique gameplay. It was very refreshing to play, as there wasn't, and well, isn't much like it. Game looks great and has incredible sound design, which is just the bare minimum of From Software. The game does boast a fair challenge, but with tons of solutions on offer with how much build variety there is. This is what a AAA title should look like. Number 9 we have Lethal Company, a co-op horror about scavenging at abandoned moons to sell scrap to the company. That's the Steam description of this game, and boy does it sell you down a river. I can't remember the last time I have laughed as hard as what I have playing this game. Going into it I was expecting a dark, dismal and tactical survival, and sure it's dark, but holy shit, it's balls to the wall comedy and it's fucking great. Less than a tenner, buy it and play it. Number 8, Sea of Stars. This is a basic but very, very well designed game. Graphics are gorgeous, an art style that really pops out, incredible sound design and an even better score, an engrossing story and characters with personality and charm. The game boasts quite a bit of depth to the gameplay, main objectives to follow plus side content. The only real downside I would have is the game goes a bit OTT with puzzles, and what's annoying is there's an abundance of tedious ones that just feel like you're doing a chore rather than solving a puzzle, but generally pretty great game. Coming in at number 7 is most people's game of the year, and the game that did in fact win the award, and that is Baldur's Gate 3. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the game, it was fantastic, but there were a few things which frustrated me, which I'll touch upon quickly. The drop off between each act was massive, honestly. Act 1 was amazing, some of the most engaging gameplay I've experienced in a while. Act 2 was good but significantly weaker than the first, and the third act was pretty poor, I think. I don't think the characters really gelled well at all, and that is difficult to accomplish, to be fair, with the different combinations of characters and traits, goals, and just how the player plays the game. But a lot of the dialogue, especially relationships and interactions, just felt forced. The story itself is a good premise, a battle against time and fate before you get transitioned into a mind flayer, but I don't understand why there is this sort of disjointed countdown on it. For me, it really tampers with the pacing. You have members of your party whining about exploring and helping folks because they're going to get turned into a fucking mind flayer. I find myself comparing this to Divinity an awful lot, which is unfair because Divinity is a fucking masterpiece. But I did really enjoy Baldur's Gate, for the most part. The gameplay is full on D&D, which is great. It's not just inspired by D&D like Divinity, it is D&D and it's amazing. Everything from the combat to the roles to the interactions with the world, all very well executed. Game looks gorgeous, vibrant and dense environments. There's a lot to do and explore. Sound design, again, amazing. I have so much to say about this game and may make a video in the future. Wink wink, Tussle's Hand of Mustache, but you should buy it and play it. Number 6 we have System Shock. Now a little confession with this one, this was my first time ever playing System Shock and I have enjoyed what I played. The sound design was great, game looks great and the style is fantastic and it also handles really well. The story from what I've experienced so far is really good and I fully intend on finishing it. The game doesn't beat around the bush as well and there isn't any hand holding, it chucks you in and I like that. Unlike most games, you actually need to pay attention to what is being said and learn what is happening. Different weapons offer different playstyles and it's just an all-round fun experience. Number 5, Football Manager 2024. The dev said most refined FM we've released and they weren't wrong. I've played each FM game now since FM 19 and I've sunk hundreds of hours into each one and this one is absolutely no exception. Pure footballing simulation masterclass, full on after work relaxation or 2-day binge. Can be played in any style, achieve any footballing goal you want. If you like football and you like in-depth simulation, then this is the game for you, enough said. Number 4 we have my personal indie game of the year and that is Dredge. This is a full-on hidden gem, diamond in the rough, Team 17 yet again. I don't think I've played a game by these guys that I haven't enjoyed, but Dredge is exceptional. A simple little exploration fishing game with simple mechanics on the surface, but delve beneath the waves just a little and wow. A full-on stylized Lovecraftian mystery horror, amazing art style, incredible atmosphere throughout, interesting and compelling story. The game is not what I would say scary, but definitely creepy at times, especially sailing through dense fog at night, a truly quality game and experience. At number 3 we have The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This is everything Breath of the Wild has, but better, way better. Incredible intricate mechanics, a vast, gorgeous and compelling open world, interesting story, great combat, ticks many boxes. 2 new areas which add to what was an already massive world, the ability to build your own fucking vehicles. However, I wasn't a huge fan of the dungeons. I felt they lacked a lot of atmosphere and had those stupid fucking terminal things rather than the doors. Not a massive issue, but I just wanted to get through them quickly. I know a lot of people had the issue that the game was just a £50 DLC, but I really do disagree. I think it adds to and builds upon what existed in the first game. It reminds me a lot of the dynamic between Dark Souls 1 and 3, took everything that was done right and made it better, plus added a few tweaks that made the game a new and enjoyable experience. At number 2 we have Dead Space Remastered. Dead Space is my favourite horror game of all time, and I think one of the best, and this new and improved version pays absolute homage to the first game and keeps faithful. Some of the most incredible gameplay going, suspense, atmosphere. Even though I knew what was coming, it kept me engaged throughout, which just shows how well Motive have done to capture the grandeur of the original. Having said that though, I thought I knew what was coming, but it adds a new take to the original story. The game, on top of everything, is absolutely visually stunning. Sound design, absolutely fantastic. Score and ambience is spine-chilling at times. After Shadow of the Colossus, I think this is the best remaster on the market. And finally, number 1, my personal game of the year, Lies of P. We don't have Bloodborne on PC, but we do have Lies of fucking P, and this game, fantastic. For me, this game absolutely captures what I adore about From Software games. The bosses are incredible, and almost all felt amazing to fight, with a couple of exceptions, but all were amazingly designed. You really need to learn the patterns of each one and stay composed throughout each fight. The game is very challenging, but does offer the same reliefs as other Souls, like with NPC summons if you need the extra help. The level design is very well done. Game is a lot more linear than what you'd imagine, but there is still loads to discover, secrets, shortcuts, weapons, upgrades, etc. The game offers a decent number in terms of build variety as well, and a good number of upgrade materials around for you to try your hand at new weapons and new skill sets. I really enjoyed the story as well, a rather suggestive and subjective story that allows you to interpret things in your own way and adds to the replay factor. The game does have a couple of flaws, with a few balancing issues in the end being a bit annoying, but these take away virtually nothing from what it makes this game absolutely exceptional. And that's a wrap, folks. 2023 was definitely an interesting year for games. Many left a lot to be desired, but some are genuinely incredible experiences. Thanks for sticking around to the end if you're still here, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you later.